Can you share some of the specific animal welfare issues that Wilberforce was involved in?
What he was sort of famous for was that he would use his influence as a major figure to support things, even if he wasn't the number one champion of them, whether in the culture or in politics. And so he was known to do that. So he was always present in Parliament when there was a debate on issues concerning animals. He was always there because he knew, first of all, he was a spectacular orator and debater. So he could lend his voice literally to the cause. So it was something that he took seriously enough that he would just make sure that he was present. And he cared about this issue of how animals were treated. He understood that it has to do with the whole culture. So he was always present, always lending his voice. He wrote about it in his famous book that came out in 1797. One of the things he mentions is how cultures that are really broken and lost fill up their empty time, and people fill up their empty lives with blood sports, with cruelty to animals. I mean, we see that today in various ways. People watch movies today that are torture porn. Why are we watching these things, and what does it say about us? Wilberforce understood it doesn't say good things. People always want to turn that around and say, oh, he's a prude, mind your own business. But he said, no, this affects everybody. If we're a culture of people who are insensitive to horrible cruelty, it will affect everybody. It will affect people. It'll certainly affect the people who are insensitive to the cruelty. Their lives will become less somehow. And so he really did care about that. Bull baiting is one of the things that I write about in my book. In fact, I put a first-hand account of someone who witnessed bull baiting. And anybody who is sensitive to animals, who cares about animals as I do, you can barely read it because it's hard for us to fathom how human beings could be that cruel. Just about every village in England at the time practiced bull baiting. And what it was that a bull would be tethered to a stake. It would have just enough room that it could move around and do damage to dogs that were set upon it to attack it. So dogs were bred, you've heard of bulldogs, they were specifically bred so that they would have large, powerful jaws and tiny bodies, so they could sink their teeth into the face, snout of this poor bull, and the bull wouldn't be able to shake it free. It's unbelievable that this was a whole art. This is not something that they just did because they were bored and they said, oh, here's an idea. They worked on this. I mean, they bred these dogs for this. And as I said, every village had this. So people would come out and they would get drunk and they would watch this. And what would happen is that these bulls would be grotesquely mauled and torn by these dogs. Similarly, the dogs would be horribly gored and mauled by the bulls who were fighting back. And so when you read about this, you just can't believe that this was typical, this was normal. And so Wilberforce understood that this is a blight on the culture, and he had the courage to speak up about it. He didn't care what people thought of him. They thought he was a prude or whatever. He said, I don't care. I really don't care what you think. This is right, and I'm going to fight. And I think sometimes, that's why he's such a hero, because he didn't care what people thought. He cared about what God thought. He cared about what was right, and he was an incredible champion on this. And we can trace all reforms and activism in the world of animals back to William Wilberforce and back to his faith, because that's where it came from. So this is it's pretty important what he did.